Hi everyone, this is Narendra with MS. I am Naren and welcome to another Thoughtful Thursday, the 10th episode of Thoughtful Thursday. So, for this Thoughtful Thursday, actually, I was having a certain conversation with someone today, and they were expressing how to approach someone with a disability, and so they asked me what would be a better way to approach people with disability, because with a disability, because a lot of times what ends up happening is our first sort of like our go-to thing is to be sympathetic towards them. But one thing that I also had to think about for a while, because of course we live in a more empathetic world. Empathy is much more important than sympathy. But even you know getting to the empathy level does take a little bit of time, and a lot of times people sometimes find it very hard to differentiate between the empathy and the sympathy part of things, right? How do you approach someone who might have um, a disability, might be a little different in any way whatsoever? Like, how do you approach them without making it seem that you're a level above them, right? Because that's the whole aspect of sympathy, right? Where you're kind of feeling that they might not have something that you do, and so you're approaching it from that angle. But empathy definitely makes you look at other people eye to eye, just being in their footsteps, walking in their shoes, seeing them. So the person who I was talking to pretty much asked me that, how do you change that whole thing? And that is one thing that I also, you know, sometimes have a little trouble defining. Like, how are you able to kind of adopt a different approach compared to something that you probably have been using for a very long time, right? A lot of times, um, I think it is the human condition that makes us always compare ourselves or contrast ourselves with a person in front of us, a person next to us, a person maybe standing in line behind us, um, to the point where we say, okay, fine, this is how I'm, better off or worse off than, you know, the next person, the next entity. And when I think of that, usually the first thing I do is I always have to say that we're pretty much sure we all grow up with certain privileges, we all grow up with certain things that we have while other people don't. But at the end of the day, all of us are technically human, right? Inside our bodies, we're one skeleton, right? Some might be taller, some might be smaller, some might be shorter, some might have a smaller skeleton, some might have a larger, thicker skeleton. So everyone is going to be different, but at the end of the day, we're all the same. And the more we start looking at each other as you know just another person, the easier it is to become a little more empathetic. And so that is one thing that I would probably tell people to first try to adopt a more empathetic approach. But more so than that, it is just to be able to hear them out, right? Listen to their story. What do they have to share for themselves, right? While I discuss my sort of MS story, I know that not everyone will have the same story, right? A lot of people will not have had the same experiences I've had, or a lot of people who might have had the same exact experiences might have had different perceptions of the experiences they've had. So, as a result, everyone's different, but the only way to make sure that all of us actually do end up seeing each other eye to eye, for all of us to be able to actually become empathetic towards each other, is to just keep listening to more stories, to be available for that other person. And that is one thing that I did want to, share. um, and considering that this was a conversation that I actually had um, earlier today with someone, I am so excited to be able to, share this experience and actually also maybe ask the same question of you, right? If you do get to, watch this, which is, how do you tell people to become more empathetic, or how do you tell people um, to adopt more of an empathy first policy rather than a sympathy first, right? How do you get people to get out of their, sympathy level state and go more towards empathy, right? What would you be sort of your points, tips, and tricks? And please do share any inputs, any insights you have, because, you know, I do like to have a conversation. I do want to get the conversation started. I do also want to get, more insights on what I can tell people when they talk to me and ask me, not only what the difference between sympathy and empathy is, but how to become more empathetic as opposed to being sympathetic. So, with that said, I do want to say thank you so much for watching. This was Thoughtful Thursday. This is Naren Saifat MS. I am Naren, and here's wishing you a good night and sweet dreams. Bye.